The cowboy drank from the forbidden spring. He heard a faint whisper. You belong to me. Jack Mercer had been riding for hours under the blazing sun. The desert stretched endlessly in every direction, a land of gold and brown where the wind seemed to carry secrets along with the dust. He shaded his eyes with one hand and squinted at the horizon, where jagged cliffs rose like silent sentinels guarding the unknown. His horse, a strong chestnut named Ranger, moved steadily, though even the animal seemed to feel the heat pressing down from the cloudless sky. Jack was no stranger to long rides. Life had taught him patience, endurance, and the ability to navigate through harsh lands. But today the air felt heavier, almost expectant, as if the desert itself was waiting for something to happen. Jack had come to this part of the country not for work, not for fame, but for a kind of quiet he couldn't find anywhere else. Towns were crowded with chatter and noise, and people often asked questions he didn't want to answer. He liked the open spaces, the solitude, and the feeling that he could disappear into the landscape and be forgotten. There was freedom in riding through a place where no one knew your name, where the only companion who mattered was your horse. The idea of the forbidden spring had reached him in a small, dusty town a few days earlier. Jack had stopped for water and supplies at the general store, a low wooden building with a tin roof that rattled in the wind. An old man hunched over and leaning on a crooked cane had spoken to him while the storekeeper wasn't looking. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper, but it carried a weight that made Jack stop in his tracks. "You're not from around here," the man said. His eyes, pale and sharp, seemed to see right through Jack. "You look like someone who's searching for something he can't name. There's a spring out past the cliffs." "Don't ask me where exactly. Some call it forbidden. Some say it has waters sweeter than any river, clearer than any lake. But you should listen, boy. Some who drink from it, they never return the same."
Jack had nodded politely, masking the curiosity sparking inside him.
He had heard many strange tales in his life, tales meant to scare newcomers and keep them away from certain places. But this story lodged itself in his mind like a stone that won't settle in the sand. The old man's warning didn't stop Jack from thinking about the spring. In fact, it made it impossible to forget. Now as he rode closer to the cliffs, Jack remembered every word the old man had said. He had been careful to note the directions vaguely, memorizing landmarks and hoping that the landscape would guide him. The canyon ahead was massive, with sharp rocks jutting out in shadows that moved with the angle of the sun. He slowed Ranger as they approached the first ridge. From there, the land dropped into a valley he hadn't expected, a hidden pocket of green in the otherwise arid expanse. It was beautiful in a way that took his breath. And for a moment, Jack forgot the harshness of the desert. Ranger sniffed at the ground and pawed at the dirt. Jack slid from the saddle and let him graze, while he studied the valley. There was something almost magical about the place. A small stream meandered through the center, glinting in the sunlight. Though it didn't match the description of the spring exactly, Jack felt a sense of hope. He tied Ranger to a nearby tree and continued on foot, his boots crunching against the dry earth. As he climbed, Jack thought about his own life. He had spent years wandering from town to town, working where he could find work, and never staying long enough to make friends. The people he had known either moved on, passed away, or drifted into lives he could never be a part of. He carried a solitude that sometimes weighed on him but other times felt like armor against the world. The desert, with all its silence and danger, suited him in ways towns never could. The climb grew steeper. Jack's shirt clung to his back with sweat, and his arms ached from gripping rocks and holding himself steady. The wind picked up, rushing through the canyon like a living creature, and he had to stop and brace himself against the gusts. His heart pounded, not just from exertion, but from the thrill of discovering something no one else had seen. Finally, after hours of careful climbing and navigating narrow ledges, Jack reached the top of the ridge. Before him lay a narrow gorge, almost hidden by the rocky walls. He noticed a faint shimmer at its center, where sunlight seemed to dance on the surface of water. He knew instantly that he had found the spring. It was smaller than he had imagined, more secluded and eerily quiet. The water bubbled gently, as if it were breathing, and a thin mist hovered above the surface despite the hot air. Jack approached cautiously, feeling a strange sense of reverence. He knelt beside the spring and scooped some water into his hands. It was cool and clear, almost impossibly pure. He hesitated, recalling the old man's words. Some who drink from it never return the same. His hand trembled slightly, but thirst and curiosity won over caution. He brought the water to his lips and drank deeply. The taste was unlike anything he had ever experienced. It was refreshing, yes, but also strangely sweet, leaving a tingling warmth in his chest. Jack lowered his hands and blinked, expecting nothing more than relief from thirst, but then he heard it. A faint whisper so soft he thought he might be imagining it. "You belong to me." Jack froze. He looked around, searching for someone or something that might have spoken. But the gorge was empty. The trees swayed gently in the wind, the water rippled calmly, and the only sound was the faint rustle of leaves. He shook his head, trying to dismiss the voice as a trick of the wind, or the desert playing games with his mind. Yet the words lingered. They echoed in his mind long after he stepped back from the spring. There was no anger, no threat, only a quiet, insistent pull, like the water itself was reaching for him. Jack's curiosity deepened, though he tried to push it away. Something about the voice made his skin tingle, and he felt an unfamiliar ache in his chest. He sat beside the spring for a while, letting the cool water flow through his fingers and trying to calm his racing thoughts. The desert around him was silent now, as if holding its breath. Jack wondered why he had been drawn here. Was it luck, fate, or something else he could not name? The more he considered it, the more he realized that he had always been searching for something he hadn't even understood until now. The sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the cliffs in shades of orange and red. Shadows lengthened, and Jack knew he had to decide whether to camp here for the night or begin the long ride back to town. Part of him wanted to stay, to explore the area around the spring, but another part warned him against lingering too long. He looked at Ranger, who had settled nearby, and felt a deep sense of companionship. The horse was patient, loyal, and unwavering, qualities Jack himself wished he could claim more of. As evening fell, Jack made camp a short distance from the spring. He built a small fire, careful not to get too close to the water. The flames cast flickering shadows on the canyon walls, and Jack felt both at peace and on edge. He couldn't shake the whisper. It returned intermittently, softer than before, as if the wind carried it just beyond reach. "You belong to me." Jack lay on his bedroll, staring up at the stars, peeking through the canyon walls. He had faced storms, bandits, and wild animals, yet nothing had unsettled him like this spring. There was a mystery here, one he felt compelled to unravel, and a warning he couldn't ignore. Sleep came fitfully, with dreams of water shimmering in sunlight and voices calling him from the shadows. By morning, Jack had made a decision. He would explore further. The whisper had not frightened him. It had intrigued him. There was something about this hidden place that promised answers, perhaps even a chance to confront the loneliness that had followed him for so many years. With Ranger at his side, he packed his small supplies and prepared to delve deeper into the canyon. The desert around him seemed unchanged, but Jack felt different. There was a quiet determination in his steps, a sense that the forbidden spring had marked him in some way. Whatever lay ahead, he would face it. The whisper, the water, and the hidden spring had become part of him now, and he could not turn back. Not yet. As he rode deeper into the canyon, Jack felt a mixture of anticipation and caution. The cliffs loomed above, and the shadows grew longer with every step. But the thrill of discovery coursed through him, stronger than fear. For the first time in a long while, he felt fully alive, drawn to a mystery that promised to change him forever. And somewhere in the silence of the desert, the spring waited, its water glimmering, its whispers patient, as if it had been expecting him all along. The morning sun crept over the canyon walls, spilling gold and orange across the desert floor. Jack Mercer stirred on his bedroll, Ranger resting nearby, ears flicking at the sounds of the early wind. The air smelled of dust, dry grass, and the faint hint of water from the hidden spring. Jack stretched and rubbed his eyes, still feeling the pull of the whisper he had heard the night before. "You belong to me!" The words lingered in his mind, soft but impossible to ignore. He had always been a man of reason, someone who trusted his own eyes and hands more than rumors or voices carried on the wind. Yet, standing near the spring, Jack could not deny the feeling that the place was different, alive in a way the desert usually was not. The water sparkled as if it contained light of its own, and the mist hovering over the surface seemed to move with purpose, curling and twisting as though it had a mind. Jack knelt and touched the water again. It was cool, but now there was a strange energy to it, a gentle vibration that traveled up his arms and into his chest. He took a deep breath, trying to shake off the unease that had begun to creep into him.
It's just water.
Nothing more. He reminded himself, though a small part of him doubted it. There was a story here, a history perhaps, and Jack knew he would not leave until he understood a piece of it. The canyon beyond the spring was a labyrinth of rocks and small paths, some natural, some worn by animals and travelers over the years. Jack decided to explore, leaving Ranger tied near the spring. The horse stamped and nickered softly, but Jack promised him a quick return. As he moved deeper into the canyon, the whispers came again, faint at first, then stronger. "You belong to me." This time the voice was clearer, sharper, yet still calm, almost hypnotic. Jack froze and looked around, searching for the source. There was nothing, no people, no animals, no movement beyond the natural sway of the trees and the glint of sunlight on rocks. Yet the voice was unmistakable. He shook his head, telling himself that it must be the wind, tricking him with its echoes. But even as he reasoned this, he felt a pull in his chest, a subtle tug that made him step forward, deeper into the canyon, toward something he could not name. The path narrowed, and soon Jack found himself in a hidden alcove. Sunlight barely reached this part of the canyon, and the air was cooler, filled with the faint scent of moss and wet earth. There, nestled in a depression of stone, was another pool of water, smaller than the spring he had found, but equally clear and inviting. Jack knelt beside it, letting his fingers trail in the water. He saw his reflection, but it seemed different. Not distorted, but somehow sharper, more alert, as if the water was revealing something he had never noticed in himself. The whisper returned, now unmistakable, carrying a tone that was neither threatening nor kind, simply insistent. "You belong to me." Jack swallowed hard. He had always prided himself on being brave, but there was a shiver running down his spine. He did not feel fear exactly, but a deep curiosity mingled with caution. Something about the water of the canyon and the voice felt ancient, older than any town or trail he had known. It felt like it had always existed, waiting for him. He took a small sip of water, careful this time, testing himself. It was cool, sweet, and invigorating, sending a rush of energy through his body. He blinked, trying to shake the feeling of being watched. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, he felt lighter, as if a burden he had carried for years had been lifted from his shoulders. His memories of long, lonely nights on the trail, of towns that had never felt like home, seemed less pressing. But alongside the relief, a strange longing stirred, a desire to stay, to understand more, to be part of this hidden world the spring seemed to belong to. Jack explored the alcove further. Small caves branched off from the main path, and he noticed faint markings on the walls, scratches, symbols, or perhaps natural formations that looked like letters. He studied them closely, but could not make sense of the patterns. The air was alive with a soft hum, almost musical, that seemed to come from the stones themselves. Jack could feel it in his chest, vibrating with the rhythm of his heartbeat. Time seemed to stretch and bend in the canyon. He could not tell if it was hours or only minutes that passed as he wandered, mesmerized by the quiet energy of the place. Even the sun seemed to hesitate, casting shadows that moved more slowly than they should have. He found a small ledge above a trickling stream where he rested, leaning against a rock and letting the strange sensation wash over him. Memories surfaced unexpectedly. He remembered the faces of people he had known and lost, friends, co-workers, townsfolk, even strangers whose paths had crossed his for brief moments. Each memory came with a pang of longing, a realization of how fleeting life could be. The whisper, soft and patient, seemed to reach into those memories, reminding him that some things once encountered could not be forgotten. "You belong to me." Jack tried to speak, to call out to the canyon, but his voice seemed swallowed by the rocks. "Who's there?" he asked softly, his words echoing faintly. There was no answer, only the soft hum of the water and the whisper repeating the same phrase over and over. It was not angry, not malicious, simply persistent, as if inviting him to understand, to listen, and perhaps to surrender a part of himself to this hidden world. He decided to rest beside the stream for a while, letting Ranger graze near the spring he had left behind. The horse seemed unusually calm, almost aware of the canyon's quiet energy. Jack watched the water ripple over smooth stones and thought about his life on the trail, how he had always moved forward, always searching, never staying, never belonging anywhere. And yet here, in this hidden canyon, something about the water made him pause. He felt a connection he had never experienced before, a sense that this place had been waiting for him, calling him, shaping itself around him even before he arrived. As the day wore on, Jack noticed subtle changes in himself. His thoughts were sharper, more aware. He could hear the smallest movements in the canyon, a bird fluttering its wings, the rustle of lizards in the sand, even the distant hum of insects hidden in the rocks. The whisper was no longer frightening. It was simply present, a quiet companion that seemed to offer insight rather than command. He explored further, climbing small rock formations and tracing narrow paths that led to hidden nooks. In one corner he found an old tree growing stubbornly from a crack in the rock, its roots twisted over the stones like veins, and its leaves shimmered even in the muted light of the canyon. Jack felt an unexpected calm, a sense of timelessness. He could imagine the tree standing there for hundreds of years, witnessing everything, and somehow understanding it all. He sat beneath its shade, leaning against the gnarled trunk, and felt a strange kinship with the quiet resilience of the tree. By evening, the canyon had shifted again, shadows stretching across the rocks, and the temperature dropping slightly. Jack felt a quiet hunger, not just for food or water, but for understanding. He realized that this place, the spring, the whisper, and even the canyon itself were testing him, challenging him to confront the solitude he had carried for so long. He thought of all the choices he had made, the towns he had left behind, the people he had met and lost. Here he was forced to face himself, stripped of distractions, confronted with the echo of a voice that claimed him in a way he could not fully resist. That night, as he lay near the alcove stream, Jack pondered the meaning of the whisper. Was it the canyon itself speaking? The spring? Or something deeper, older, that had always existed in these rocks and waters? He did not know, and part of him feared he never would. Yet he also knew that he could not leave. Not yet. The pull was too strong, the curiosity too pressing, the promise of discovery too irresistible. Sleep came fitfully, filled with dreams of water glimmering under moonlight and shadows that moved with purpose. He saw visions of people from his past, not as they had been, but as reflections of the whispers, calling him, reminding him, shaping him. He awoke in the early hours of the morning, heart pounding, the faint sound of the whisper still echoing. "You belong to me." It was no longer frightening, nor entirely comforting, just present. Jack rose and gazed at the spring. The water shimmered like silver in the pale dawn, and the mist curled over the surface. He knelt and touched it again, feeling the familiar rush of energy through his arms. This was no ordinary spring, he realized. It was something ancient, alive, and patient. It did not demand, it invited. It did not threaten, it revealed. With a deep breath, Jack resolved to explore further into the canyon, to see what secrets it held, and what it intended to show him. Ranger stirred beside him, and Jack mounted, ready for the unknown. He did not know what lay ahead, nor did he fully understand the pull of the spring, but he felt alive in a way he had never felt before. Every step, every sound, every whisper of the canyon was a thread weaving him into a story older than himself, a story that he had only just begun to understand. And so, with a spring behind him but its energy still within, Jack Mercer rode deeper into the canyon, ready to face whatever mysteries awaited, drawn onward by the faint, patient whisper that would not let him turn back. You belong to me. The canyon seemed endless, its walls rising high and sharp, guiding Jack Mercer deeper into a world untouched by time. As he rode, the whispers from the spring echoed faintly in his mind. You belong to me. They were no longer frightening but persistent, like a current pulling him toward a place he could not yet see. Jack felt a mixture of excitement and unease, unsure whether he was being drawn by curiosity or something older, something alive in the stones and water. The path wound tighter now, narrower, with jagged rocks pressing in on either side. Ranger moved carefully, placing his hooves on the uneven stones with a precision Jack admired. The canyon was quieter than any desert Jack had crossed, but there was life here. Small lizards darted across rocks. Birds called softly from hidden crevices, and the occasional rustle in the underbrush suggested creatures too shy to reveal themselves. Jack had learned to read the land, and every sound made him alert. Yet he also felt strangely at peace, as if the canyon itself was accepting him. Hours passed, though time seemed different here. The sun moved slowly across the sky, and shadows stretched and shifted in unusual ways. Jack noticed that the colors of the rocks were richer, almost glowing in the light. Moss clung stubbornly to cracks, and tiny pools of water reflected the sky above like mirrors. The whisper returned from time to time, always the same, calm and insistent. You belong to me. It no longer seemed like a warning. It felt like an invitation to explore, to understand, to become part of the canyon in a way he had never imagined. As he rounded a bend, Jack noticed smoke curling in the distance. He froze, scanning the rocks and trees. The smoke was thin, pale, and rising from a hidden alcove in the canyon wall. Curious, he approached cautiously, dismounting Ranger and leading him quietly. The smoke led to a small clearing where a modest cabin stood, almost swallowed by the canyon. It looked old, made from stone and weathered wood, but sturdy. A thin wisp of smoke rose from the chimney, suggesting someone was home. Jack hesitated. He had spent much of his life avoiding towns and people, preferring solitude. But something about this place felt different. It was not threatening. It was quiet and unobtrusive, like it had been waiting for someone to arrive. He knocked softly on the door. After a long moment, it creaked open and an old man appeared. He was tall, lean, with hair white as snow, and eyes sharp and clear. He looked at Jack carefully, as if studying him from a distance before speaking.
"You've come far," the man said, voice steady but gentle. "Few do."
"You've found what many search for and turn away from. Few understand the canyon. Even fewer respect it." Jack nodded slowly. I found the spring," he said, uncertain. "The one hidden in the cliffs." "I heard something bad."
"A voice, maybe, or the wind. It said, 'You belong to me.'" The old man's eyes softened. "Ah," he said, nodding. "You heard the whisper."
"The spring calls, yes, but it does not force. It guides. It awakens things you may not understand. Come in. We will speak where it is warm and safe." Inside, the cabin was simple but comfortable. A small fire burned in the hearth, and shelves lined the walls with books, jars of herbs, and small trinkets from long ago. The old man gestured for Jack to sit, and Jack obliged. Feeling the tension in his muscles ease slightly, Ranger nickered softly outside, grazing near the spring, waiting patiently. The man introduced himself as Elias, a hermit who had lived in the canyon for decades. He had chosen this life after years of wandering, much like Jack. The canyon, Elias explained, is alive in a way few understand. The spring is part of it. Some call it forbidden, others miraculous. It is neither. It simply exists, patiently waiting for those who seek it, with open hearts. Jack listened, fascinated. He had never met anyone who spoke with such clarity and calm. Elias did not dismiss the whisper, nor did he exaggerate its power. Instead, he described it as a guide, a presence that helped those who were ready to face their inner selves. "You have wandered long, Jack," Elias said, his eyes resting on him with a knowing look. "You carry solitude, regret, and loss. The canyon can reveal these things. It can show you who you truly are, if you are willing to see." Jack felt a chill run through him. He realized that the whisper had done more than call him to the spring. It had reached into his mind, stirring memories and feelings he had buried. Nights alone on the trail, friends lost to time. Opportunities passed. He felt each one as vividly as if it were happening now. Yet, alongside the sadness, there was clarity, a sharp awareness of what he had been avoiding for years. Elias smiled faintly. "You see, the spring does not take, it reveals. Those who cannot bear what they see leave and forget. Those who embrace it even partially carry something new with them." Jack's mind raced. He wanted to understand, but part of him hesitated. Could he bear what the canyon wanted to show him? Could he face the loneliness, the choices, the regrets? He took a deep breath. I think I want to understand," he said. "But I don't know what that means yet." Elias nodded. "Explore the canyon. Observe its secrets. The spring is only the beginning. It will teach patience, awareness, and restraint. And it will show you what you truly seek, though not always in the ways you expect." Over the next several days, Jack remained in the canyon, guided by Elias and the whisper. He explored hidden paths, climbed rocks to see views no human eye had seen before, and discovered small pools and streams that seemed to hum with quiet energy. Each place carried its own whisper, subtle and soft, reinforcing the presence he could feel in the air. The canyon was alive, and he felt it watching, patient but attentive, like a teacher waiting for a student to understand the lesson. Jack's perception of the land deepened. He noticed patterns in the shadows, the way water flowed, the delicate balance of life even in this harsh environment. The whisper became a companion rather than a voice to fear, guiding him subtly, teaching him to listen not only to the canyon but to himself. He began to recognize the isolation he had carried as both shield and burden. In the presence of the canyon, he could see his own fears more clearly, but he could also feel strength. He had long overlooked Elias occasionally joined him on his walks, offering guidance, but never answers. "The canyon is patient," he said. "It does not rush. You will learn when you are ready, not when you wish to. Some lessons are gentle, others insist upon your attention, but all are fair." One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the rocks in shades of red and gold, Jack reached the edge of a hidden plateau. Below him stretched a valley filled with the glow of evening light. He could see streams crisscrossing patches of green and small animals moving in the shadows. He felt an unexpected surge of gratitude and awe. For the first time in years, he felt connected, not just to the land, but to something larger than himself. The whisper returned, as soft and insistent as ever. "You belong to me." This time, Jack did not recoil. He did not question or fear. He felt a sense of acceptance. Not of submission, but of understanding. He belonged, in a sense, to the journey, to the discovery, to the quiet strength of the canyon that had called him here. And he belonged to himself, finally willing to face the parts he had hidden for so long. That night he returned to the cabin where Elias awaited with a warm meal and a calm smile. "You are changing," the old man said. "The canyon does not take lightly. It rewards those who observe and reflect. But beware, the deeper you go, the more you may find. Some truths are difficult to carry." Jack nodded, feeling the weight of those words. He had learned that the canyon did not offer easy answers. It offered understanding, reflection, and growth, but also challenge. The spring, the whisper, and Elias were guides, not saviors. And Jack realized that the transformation he felt was not magical alone. It was the work of facing himself, acknowledging his fears, and accepting the solitude he had carried. Days turned into nights, and Jack began to notice subtle shifts within himself. He was calmer, more aware, and yet more alive than he had ever felt. The whispers were no longer distractions. They were reminders, gentle nudges toward insight. And in this rhythm he discovered the balance he had long sought, a harmony between solitude and connection, between curiosity and caution. He also discovered humility. The canyon was vast, older than anything he had known, and in its presence he felt small and unimportant, yet also a part of something greater. Each day brought new wonders: a pool of water that reflected the sky perfectly, a cliff where birds nested safely, a hidden grove of trees thriving against impossible odds. Every detail reminded him that life, even in the harshest places, carried beauty and wisdom. One afternoon, as he sat beside a stream watching the sunlight sparkle on the water, Jack realized he had changed in ways he could not fully describe. He was no longer simply a wanderer, searching for a place to rest. He was a man learning to see, to listen, and to understand. The whisper remained soft and constant, but it was no longer a command. It was a companion, a reminder, a guide through a journey that had only just begun. Jack Mercer had discovered that the canyon, the spring, and the whisper were not just external forces. They were mirrors, reflecting his fears, desires, and strength. And in facing them, he began to understand that beguiling was not about ownership, control, or fear. It was about awareness, acceptance, and connection. And so, as the canyon settled into quiet evening, Jack prepared to face whatever mysteries lay ahead. The journey was far from over, and the canyon still held secrets beyond his imagination. Yet he felt ready, patient, and alive. He had walked deeper into himself and the canyon, and both had welcomed him quietly, with infinite patience. The whisper came one last time for the night. "You belong to me." But this time, Jack smiled softly. He did not feel fear. He felt understanding, and a strange peace he had never known before. Morning came slowly to the canyon, panting the cliffs in soft gold and orange. Jack Mercer rose from his bedroll near the spring, stretching and taking a deep breath of the crisp air. Ranger shifted beside him, snorting softly, as if aware that something important was about to unfold. Jack could feel it too, a quiet tension in the air, a sense that the canyon itself had been waiting for this day. The whispers returned, faint but persistent. "You belong to me." Jack had spent weeks exploring the hidden corners of the canyon, guided by Elias and the subtle pull of the spring. Each step had revealed more of himself than he expected, and each discovery had brought him closer to understanding the canyon's strange and ancient wisdom. He had faced fear, isolation, and the deep stirrings of loneliness, but he had also learned patience, observation, and respect for life in all its forms. Today, he felt the canyon calling him again, but in a different way. The pull was stronger, more insistent, yet not threatening. He knew instinctively that this was a turning point. The spring, the whisper, and the canyon had taught him much. But now he had a choice: to follow the whisper further, to surrender fully to whatever power or mystery resided here, or to leave, taking with him the lessons he had learned and the understanding he had gained. He walked carefully toward the spring, Ranger at his side. The water shimmered like liquid silver, and the faint mist danced above the surface as if alive. Jack knelt, letting the water run through his fingers, feeling the gentle energy that had accompanied him from the beginning. The whisper came again, soft and patient. "You belong to me?" Jack closed his eyes, thinking of everything the canyon had shown him. He remembered the hidden alcoves, the streams, the plateau that overlooked the valley, and most of all, the words of Elias. The hermit had said that the canyon does not rush, that it rewards those who observe and reflect, but also that some truths are difficult to carry. Jack now understood that the canyon was giving him a choice, not one of force, but of awareness. He could feel the energy of the spring urging him forward, promising knowledge, discovery, perhaps even power. But he also felt a gentle reminder of restraint, of balance. The whisper was no longer a command. It was a guide, waiting to see what he would do. Jack realized that his decision would not just shape his path in the canyon, but the rest of his life. He stood and looked across the canyon. The paths he had traveled were familiar, yet the hidden corners he had yet to explore beckoned with a quiet allure. The spring reflected the morning light, the water moving slowly as if breathing. Jack took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill his lungs, and he listened closely to the whisper. "You belong to me." It did not frighten him now. He had learned to listen without panic, to feel without submission. The canyon had shown him that understanding required patience, observation, and courage. And Jack had discovered that belonging was not about losing oneself, but about recognizing one's place in a larger story, in a larger world. He walked slowly along the spring, noticing the small details he had once overlooked. The way the sunlight glinted on tiny ripples, the faint patterns of moss on the rocks, the subtle hum of life all around. Each element seemed connected, part of a delicate balance that he could sense, but not fully explained. The whisper came again, softer this time, almost gentle. "You belong to me." Jack thought of his past, the years of wandering, the solitude, the moments of regret, and missed opportunity. He had carried them with him, sometimes as shields, sometimes as burdens. The canyon had revealed them, but it had also offered something more: understanding. He understood now that the spring and the whisper were not forces meant to claim him, but mirrors reflecting his own life, his choices, his desires, and his fears. For a long time he simply walked, letting the canyon guide him without rushing, observing, listening, and reflecting. The sun rose higher, warming his back, and the shadows shifted gently across the rocks. Jack felt a calm he had not known in years, a connection to the land, to himself, and to the quiet energy that had drawn him here. By midday he reached a narrow ridge overlooking a hidden valley. Below, the spring he had discovered sparkled like a jewel, and beyond it streams meandered through patches of green. Jack could see small animals moving through the underbrush, birds soaring above, and even the faint traces of other hidden pools he had not yet found. The canyon stretched endlessly in every direction, and he felt both small and intimately connected to its vastness. He sat on a rock, Ranger beside him, and considered his choice. He could follow the whisper further, surrendering to whatever mysteries awaited. He could let the canyon claim him, in a sense, and see where that path led. Or he could leave, taking with him the understanding, patience, and awareness he had gained, returning to the world beyond the cliffs with a new perspective. Jack's mind wandered back to Elias. The hermit had taught him that the canyon rewards those who observe and reflect. Jack realized now that the reward was not power, not magic, not possession. It was knowledge, understanding, and the courage to see oneself clearly. The whisper had guided him, but it had never forced him. He alone would decide where he belonged, what he would carry with him, and what he would leave behind. Hours passed as Jack sat in quiet contemplation. The canyon remained still, patient, and ever-present. The spring glimmered below, its water moving gently, almost as if breathing. Jack felt a deep gratitude for what he had experienced here. He had faced his solitude, acknowledged his fears, and embraced the lessons the canyon offered. And he had discovered something more: strength he had not known he possessed, clarity of thought, and a sense of belonging that was not tied to a place or a person, but to himself. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, Jack finally made his decision. He would leave the spring, the whisper, and the canyon behind. But he would carry the lessons he had learned, the understanding he had gained, and the calm, patient awareness that the canyon had taught him. He would not forget the whisper, nor the feeling of being part of something larger than himself. But he would walk forward in the world beyond the cliffs, ready to live with new perspective and quiet strength. Rose and mounted Ranger, taking one last look at the spring. The water shimmered in the fading light, the mist curling gently above its surface. The whisper came one final time, soft and patient. "You belong to me." Jack smiled faintly, feeling a sense of peace. He did not belong to the spring, nor did he need to. He belonged to himself, and he carried the canyon's wisdom within him. With a deep breath, he guided Ranger along the path leading out of the canyon, each step steady, deliberate, and full of purpose. The ride back was calm, the canyon silent but alive in subtle ways. Jack noticed the details he had once overlooked, the patterns of shadows, the rustle of leaves, the gentle flow of distant streams. Each element reminded him of the lessons he had learned: patience, observation, humility, and the courage to face oneself. He felt lighter, yet stronger, carrying a quiet confidence that he had never known before. As night fell, Jack emerged from the canyon into the wider desert. The stars stretched endlessly above, and the cool night air brushed against his face. He felt the vastness of the world, and yet he also felt anchored, grounded in the understanding he had gained. The spring and the canyon were behind him, but their lessons remained etched into his mind and heart. Jack rode through the desert under the starlit sky, feeling a new sense of purpose. He had learned that some forces in life are not to be controlled, but observed and respected. He had discovered that belonging is not about possession or ownership, but about awareness and understanding. And he had realized that the greatest journey is not through land or time, but through oneself. By dawn, he reached a familiar ridge overlooking the plains beyond. The world was waking, with faint sounds of animals and the soft glow of sunlight on the distant hills. Jack paused, taking a deep breath, feeling gratitude for the journey and the lessons he had learned. Ranger nuzzled his hand, and Jack patted him gently, grateful for the loyal companion who had shared the path. The whisper, now faint and distant, lingered only as a memory. It belonged to me. Jack did not fear it, nor did he feel compelled. Instead, he understood that he had listened, learned, and made his choice. He belonged to himself, and the canyon had become a part of his story, a quiet force that would guide him in ways he could not yet know. Jack rode forward, leaving the canyon behind, but carrying its wisdom within him. The world beyond stretched endlessly, full of opportunities, challenges, and unknown paths. He felt ready to face whatever lay ahead, guided by the lessons of patience, reflection, and self-understanding. The forbidden spring had been a beginning, a teacher, and a mirror. And now, with the whisper fading into memory, Jack Mercer stepped fully into the life he had long sought, a life lived with awareness, courage, and quiet strength. The canyon remained behind him, timeless and patient, its secrets intact, waiting for the next traveler who would be drawn to the whisper, the water, and the lessons that lay hidden within its cliffs. And Jack, riding into the sunrise, knew he would never forget the journey, the transformation, and the understanding he had gained. He had left the spring, but it had not left him.